All right, so we're going to talk about arrays first. What are we going to learn? What is an array? What is array syntax in Ruby? It's mostly the same in every language. What can we store in an array? How do we access the elements of an array? How do we use arrays? What are some useful array methods? And what are some cool things you can do with arrays? So what is an array? It is a type of collection or list. So you can think of it, an array, as a bucket or a container or a list. Here's an array of puppies. So cute. Okay, so what is array syntax? Arrays are denoted by square brackets. Elements of an array are separated by commas. So here are some examples. We can have a grocery list, which is an array of strings. I don't know how to make this stop. Somebody help me make this stop after. I've tried to go to settings so many times. Okay. So we can have a grocery list that's an array of strings. We can have a test scores array that's an array of numbers. We can put anything in an array. It can be strings, numbers, booleans, objects, symbols, other arrays, whatever we want. So here's some more examples. We'll talk about hashes tomorrow, but that's what a hash is. We can store anything in an array, and we can also mix types in an array. You can have strings and numbers, strings and objects, numbers and hashes. Don't do that. That is such a bad idea, but Ruby will not stop you from doing that. Okay? Why is that a bad idea? Can somebody think about why that's a bad idea?
Try pulling the other type expected to be 1 and won't be, and you get exceptions.
Yeah. So if you mix your types in an array, then you're going to be have some implicit order of things in this array, right? Like you're expecting I have a string and then a number and then a hash and then a string and then a number and then a hash. And if that gets messed up, then your program's going to break. And that's bad. Okay? So don't do that. There are better data structures when you have to manage that type of situation. Don't do that in an array. So how do we access the elements of an array? Well, arrays are indexed. We can access the elements using a number that denotes which element we want. And the index numbers start with 0. So if we have an array of pets with strings that describe these types of pets, we have a cat, a dog, a bird, and a fish, then the index numbers for the elements of this array are 0 for cat, 1 for dog, 2 for bird, 3 for fish. 0 indexed. But in Ruby, we can also index from the end of the array using negative numbers, starting with -1. So, for example, we can do it this way. -1 is fish, -2 is bird, -3 is dog, and -4 is cat. So here's an example. So this is groceries, a grocery list. We have bread, eggs, milk, and oranges. What is groceries of 0? This is how we index an element in an array, how we refer to one. What would groceries of 0 be? Bread. What about groceries of 2? Milk. 0, 1, 2, right? 0, 1, 2. Milk. What about groceries of -2? Also milk. It's not 0 index when you go from the back, because then Ruby wouldn't know which one you're talking about, right? You're talking about the first 0 or the last 0. So the last one is -1, so we go from the back. It's -1, -2. So -2 is also milk. Okay, is that clear for everybody? That bit about indexing? So we can add items to an array, and there are a number of ways to do that. We can use indexing. So just like we do to access an element of an array, we can say, for example, array of some index equals a value. So if we had bread, eggs, milk, and oranges in our list, and we said groceries of 4 equals cheese, since there's not currently anything in the 4th index in groceries because bread's at 0, eggs is 1, milk is 2, oranges is 3, then it's going to stick cheese at the end. Now, what do you think what would happen if I had said groceries of 5 equals cheese? So this is something that so this would be different in different languages. Let's try it in Ruby. So if I start IRB, this is a good use of IRB, and I said, I'm going to paste in what I had there. Oops, I didn't like that. I think maybe it's just because I pasted it, and there might be some extra. It shouldn't care about the spaces. I'm just not going to type them because. Okay, I think it maybe had some extra characters because I pasted it, because I copied it from PowerPoint. Some extra invisible characters, that happens. Okay, so groceries has this, and if I said groceries, let's say, not groceries, let's say groceries of 10. Okay, there's obviously not a 10, there's not we only go 0, 1, 2, 3, so there's nothing in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's see what happens. If I say that equals cheese, okay, and now I look at groceries, it fills all the empty spaces with nil, okay? So it'll put it in that position I told it to put it in, and if there's anything empty in between, it'll fill it with nil. Okay? Which is a bit strange. Other languages would handle things differently. Some languages you might get an error if you tried to stick something in an array and you didn't have other things to fill up those empty spaces. Okay. So how would you add juice to the grocery list using this method? Oh, shoot. That's not what I wanted. Go away. Okay. So I've got cheese in there. How would I add juice using this method? If I wanted to add juice to the end of the list?
Just index the count of items. And set that equal to juice.
Yeah, so if I were going to just hard code it though, Isaac, we're just going to hard code the index. I think it's 5. Because we added cheese to 4.
Oh, yes, cheese. Yeah. Counts the other some.
Now, I think, Isaac, what you were mentioning is, what if we didn't know how many things, what if we were doing this from a program, and we don't know that it's 5, that we need to add it to? Then we could take advantage of the array's length to figure out where to put it. I'll talk about that again in a minute after we look at some more stuff. So how do we use arrays first? When we want to store and use a list of things, we use an array. We use arrays a lot in any programming language, okay? Super useful data structure. So how do you think we would initialize an array? How do we initialize a string? Equals what? Empty quotes, right? If we wanted to initialize a string to sort of a blank value, then we would say variable name equals empty quotes. How do you think we initialize an array?
Square brackets.
That's right.
Look, I know Ruby's self-expands, but do they support defining the range?
Defining.
Like, I don't know, C#, don't have, you can't change the size.
You can't change the size, yeah. So you can't actually do that in Ruby.
Yeah.
You can't tell it, I want an array this big.
Okay.
Actually, you can, but it's not nice.
Okay,
So it's not like restrictive. You can say, I want an array with 6 things in it using array.new, but somebody could add 7 things to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no way to do that in Ruby, which you're mentioning there. So what Isaac is talking about in other languages that are more strongly typed and opinionated, when you declare a variable, like an array, you say how big it's going to be. And it won't get bigger than that. If you try to put more items than that, many items in it, then you'll get an error. So, and that's because those languages work. They allocate the memory when you declare the variable. It's the same way that typing works. So you know how we've talked like in Ruby, I don't have to say what type of variable this is. I don't have to say groceries is an array. I can say groceries equals open close square bracket, and then Ruby knows groceries is an array. But then in the very next line, I can say groceries equals a string. And Ruby's like, sure, why not? And the next line, I can say groceries is a number. And Ruby's like, you know what you're doing. Go for it, man. So other languages are not like that, because other languages, when you declare a variable, you declare that variable as a specific type, and the program, as a result, allocates a specific amount of memory based on the type that you said that variable is. And it can only take up that much space. So different data types take up different amounts of space in memory. I'm not sure how it's implemented with Ruby in the hardware. I imagine that it just, if it runs out of contiguous memory, it creates links to other locations and has some nice sophisticated garbage collection to clean up if you change an array to an int or something, right? I'm not sure what it does, but it's all Ruby magic. And it's, and so programmers that are used to more opinionated languages hate this about Ruby. They're like, this is mayhem, anarchy, what are you doing, people? This is not how things are supposed to be. But remember that the creator of Ruby created Ruby because he wanted to make programmers happy. His intention was, you know what you're doing. I trust you, programmer. You know what you're doing. You're not going to do silly things like redeclare your variables as some other data type. You wouldn't do that, would you? That's a bad practice. You would create a new variable and give it that new data type. I trust you. I trust you. You know what you're doing. I don't want to make you type those extra letters on the screen to tell us that this is an array or an int or a data type of a particular size. No need to do that. So that's why Ruby is this way, because it's intended that people understand what they're doing and they do the right thing. Okay, so how would we replace an item in an array? Can you imagine how we would do that? So if we had our grocery list and we wanted to replace an item in that array, how could we do that?
Well, you could just put the number of where you want to replace it and just put the new one in.
Yeah, you could do that. So if we have groceries as bread, eggs, milk, and oranges, if we wanted to replace milk with soy milk, how would we do that, for example?
So groceries bracket 2 equals soy milk.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's what we would get. All right, so let's look at some useful array methods. So if we have the array animals equals dog, bird. So animals.length, what do you think that returns? Yes. And this is the method that we could use to figure out what, if we were going to use indexing to add another element, then we would take the length, which is 2, and that's what we would use as our index, because we're 0 indexed. Because what animals of 2 would be our next space. So that's how we could use the length to figure out how to add something to the end of the array using indexing. But we're going to look at another way to add things to an array that we'd more likely do than that. What about animals.include with a question mark, dog? What did we learn yesterday about methods with a question mark? Yeah, they return a Boolean. So what do you think include does?
It asks the program if dog is in the array.
Yeah, so it checks to see if what you pass to include is an element in the array that you call include on. So what is it going to return in this case?
True.
Yeah. All right, what about index? What do you think it does? Yeah, it returns the index of the elements that we pass as an argument. So what is it going to return here?
1.
And what if the element's not in the array? I think it does. Let's check. So if I say groceries dot index of wine nil. All right, what about this operator? So this is, does anybody know what this operator does already? I know some of you do. Yeah, Liam?
Puts it in the array.
Yes, and where does it put it in the array?
At the very end.
At the very end. So this is probably the way that you would add something to the end of an array. What is an alternate, what is another method besides the shovel? People call that the shovel. Push. Shoveling it in. Push. Push is the other way. The shovel is kind of a shorthand for push, or it's an alternate way to say push. And what that does is it adds the element to the end of the array. What do you think reverse does? Yeah, so we're going to have bird. Oh, I changed cat to, what did I change? Gosh, that's terrible. You can tell I made changes at some point. Dog, bird, cat, bird, dog.
Can you do all the capitalize and stuff like that as well? So if you're putting capitalize and
I don't believe capitalize is a method on array, but this is what I would do if I were interested. Nope.
what about if you went a specific element in the array?
Yeah. Absolutely. Why does that work?
Calling a particular string within that element, not a group of strings.
Yeah, so what does groceries of 0 return?
Right.
And what is data type is that?
String.
So now I have a string here, so I can call any string method on it. So when we're actually, this notation here, groceries of 0, is like calling a method on, it returns something. It returns something. It returns a string in this case because that's what's stored in groceries of 0. So it returns a string. I can call any string method on that return value. Now, what happens if it returned a nil? What if I said groceries of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4? Groceries of 4 dot capitalize.
Would capitalize nil. Well, there's nil.
What would happen?
It's not a string.
Yeah, what is it going to tell me? Now, this is going to be an error you see more often than any other error in Ruby. Okay? You're going to see this error all the time. All right? When you see this error, you're going to get a no method error. And it's going to say undefined method capitalized for nil class. When you see this error, you want to look at the method. You want to look at the line. Now, I didn't execute this in a file, so there's no line number. But if I had executed this in a Ruby file, there'd be a line number pointing to the line where I call capitalize. And what sort of problem solving do you think you need to do? What is the problem when you see this error?
You look into one place, so you got a nail.
You got a nil. What were you going to say?
Yeah, well, because the method capitalizes belongs to the string class,
Yes.
and it's telling you right there that it doesn't actually have a class assigned to it, so it can't find it under that class.
That's right. So when this happens, it means I'm expecting a string where I'm calling capitalize, and I ain't getting a string. I'm getting a nil. So whatever assumption I've made about why I should have a string there is wrong. And I need to look at that assumption. And I need to look at my code, the code before that line, around that line, before it, and see why is my assumption not true? Why don't I have a string here? What are the reasons for that? In this case, it's because I'm referencing a position in the array with no value. It might be because I'm referencing a position in the array that's outside of my array where there's no value, right? So it could be that the way that I'm determining what index I'm expecting this value to be at is wrong. My logic there is flawed, and I'm not getting the right index. Okay? So just recognize this error, no method on nil class, and so you'll see it again, probably like in the next day or two, most likely.
Put 2s after groceries or dot 2s dot capitalize.
Yeah.
Can you try that out?
Yeah, let's try it. Now, that's
Oh,
interesting.
you can add the 4.
What?
Add the item number 4.
Oh, right. Yes, I see what you're saying now. Okay, I thought you thought maybe it would change the whole array. Now, we could do that, and this would be a good idea if we expect the possibility that our array contains empty spaces, and we want to ignore that case, okay? But if we always expect our array to be populated in the place that we're referring to, we would just mask the problem with this, right? Because if we actually expect there to be a valid string there, and there isn't one, then we want to know about that. So you can do things like that, but not to protect you from getting an error. Do it because you have an expectation that there may be empty values in this array, and that's okay. All right, does that make sense? Errors are good. We love errors, okay? We love errors because they show us where we have flaws in our logic, and then we can go address that. We don't want to mask errors, and we don't want to hide them, because then our program's going to do really unpredictable things that are really hard to track down. If we get an error, it's really easy to track down because it's going to give us a line number. It's going to give us a message, and we can go look at that part of the code and figure out where our logic is flawed. If we don't have an error, that's a much worse case, and then our program behaves unpredictably. And it doesn't error, but it gives us the totally wrong results. That's a much worse place to be, because now you've got to comb through your code and figure out where is this not working the way I expect it to. Okay? All right, some more useful array methods. Push. We just talked about this. What does push do? It does the same thing as the shovel, so it puts it at the end of the array. All right, unshift.
Let's put it at the start.
Yes. Unshift adds to the start of an array. Okay? Delete. Will it just delete the first one? The last one? Because we have 2 occurrences of fish. It deletes all of them. Okay? It deletes all of them. Yeah, so yes, it doesn't replace them with nils. It gets rid of them altogether. That's right. Pop.
Delete the last.
Return or possibly remove the first value.
So pop goes with push and unshift goes with shift. So if push pushes to the end of the array, pop pops the end off. It does 2 things. It returns that value and it actually removes it from the array. Okay?
It uses that value. It doesn't use that value somewhere. And
It
then
returns-
removes it out of the array.
It returns it. So if you want to know what that value was and want to do something with it, this returns that value.
So like a name out of a hat sort of situation where you've got a bunch of names
Yes.
in a hat, you want to pop it out, move
Yes.
it, and it doesn't go back in the hat.
That's
It's
right.
already been chosen.
That's right. So you may care about that value that you popped. You may want to use it, in which case you can because it'll return it. You may not care. You may just throw it away. You may just want to pop the last thing off. Okay? And that's a good way to take off the last element of the array. So shift, what do you think shift does? If shift is the opposite of unshift, like pop is the opposite of push, what do you think shift does?
Takes the first one off.
Takes the first one off and also returns it, removes it from the array. So shift removes from the start. What do you think insert does? We pass it a number.
You pass it the blank in the array and then what you want.
And at that index, you insert a new element.
That's right. So it will insert the element at the index. So we already have some, now we have dog and bird, which is at 0 and at 1. What do you think the array is going to look like after we do that insert?
Like the bird to index number 2.
That's right. It'll push everything to the right. If there's already something in that spot, it'll push it to the right. So inserts an element at that index and pushes anything else that's there to the right. Okay? Some other cool things you can do with arrays. You can concatenate them with the plus operator. When you concatenate two arrays, it creates one array with all the elements in it. Okay, so that's a quick, easy way to combine two arrays. You can use set intersection and set union. If you don't know what that is, it's okay. If you do, then this will make sense and probably make more sense. But if you use a single ampersand does a set intersection. Sets are unique from other types of lists in that they contain no duplication. Every element in a set is unique. Okay? So the result of any set operation will not contain duplicates. That's one thing to know. The intersection is the common elements of two arrays. So we have 1, 2, 2, 3, and 2, 2, 3, 4. What elements exist in both of these? 2s and 3s, and because a set contains no duplication, the result of this will be an array with just a 2 and a 3. Okay? Yes, Abs?
You see for the first one, right?
Yes.
Why does it have 3 2s in the middle instead of 2 2s?
It should only have 2. Thank you, Abs. All right, so intersection will take the common elements in the arrays and return an array with those values with no duplication. A single pipe will combine two arrays without duplication and give you the set union. So it's going to be any element that's in either array will be included in the result, but it will only occur once. So what do you think will be in the set union if we use the union operator? What's going to be in the result?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because 1, 2, 3, 4 is all of the elements that are in either of those arrays, and it only is going to, each one will only occur once. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Have an extra comma. Thanks for catching that, Abs. That was good. Thanks for asking the question. All right. So that's all we're going to cover about arrays right now. Yes, Sam?
Are you able to shuffle an array? Like, are you able
You
to
can.
shuffle up the order
You
of
can.
the set?
Yes. I think there's a shuffle. Look it up. There's a sample, which will take a random element out.
Okay.
Yeah, which is pretty handy if you want to randomize.
Yeah.
Yeah. So arrays are collections or lists. The syntax uses square brackets around the list and commas between the items. They're zero indexed. You can access the end of the array using negative indexes. You can initialize an array with empty square brackets. You can access or replace array elements using an index or a number of methods. There are heaps of methods on array. We only looked at some of them, the ones that I think, the ones that I use all the time, but there are heaps of others that you may find interesting, so you should have a look. You can use you can use the concatenation operator, the plus symbol, to put two arrays together into one array, and you can use the set operators, union and intersection, to combine arrays in useful ways. In some algorithms, it'll be really handy to do that, okay? Otherwise, don't worry about it. So there are a couple of links there. One is a really nice basic array overview that I found, and the other one is the Array Ruby docs that'll list all the methods on array, okay?